I'm Phil DeLuna. I'm a scientist and a clean tech innovator turned first time candidate for the Green Party in Toronto St. Paul's. Today I'm having a conversation with my friend Chris Caputo about why we need more science in politics. I hope you enjoy. This is my friend Chris Caputo. We both hail from the wonderful city of Windsor, Ontario. We actually went to the same high school together. Chris is doing some amazing work with an organization called ElectSTEM, as well as being an amazing scientist in his own right, a professor at York University, and a little bit of an entrepreneur too. And I'll let him describe that story. So today we're going to talk a little bit about science in politics, about why we need more scientists in politics, and what the mission of this new organization called ElectSTEM is all about. So, Chris, do you want to just give us an introduction to yourself and a little bit of your story?
Yeah, hail from Windsor, best pizza in Canada,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I did my undergrad degree also at the University of Windsor, like you did, Phil. So we followed kind of each other's paths. And I went and did my PhD at the University of Toronto in chemistry. So my area of research was very much fundamental inorganic chemistry, looking at replacing transition metals in industrial processes. I then took kind of that traditional academic path. I went to Harvard for an NSERC PDF, where I studied there for about a year, and kind of took that entrepreneurial detour at that point in time that you were alluding to, Phil. I worked at a company called Inkbox, who created like the first semi-permanent tattoos. I have a couple on me at the moment. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that for this recording. That was not planned.
Show the camera. Show us your work.
Yeah, there's a nice little frog playing guitar there. So I headed up the R&D at this company, and then had the opportunity to go to York as a Canada Research Chair, but then I can kind of continue the work that we were doing at Inkbox at York as well. So it's a nice kind of hybrid where I do some fundamental chemistry, but also do some applied kind of entrepreneurial stuff with Inkbox.
Can you describe what is it that ElectSTEM does, and importantly, the kinds of conversations that you've been having with the kinds of people that you've been reaching?
Yeah, so ElectSTEM, our purpose is really to ensure that science, has a home in every political party, at every level of government, from coast to coast to coast, and we want to do that by engaging, more scientists, more engineers in politics, and so we can see, there's situations where science becomes quite polarized, quite politicized, and then you almost have parties that are a party of science and a party that is like not a party of science. And we don't want to get to that point in Canada, because, I think, or we think as an organization, by having more scientists and engineers, those who understand the fundamentals of it, running and being in every political party, then, the science is the science. Everyone can agree upon that. And then you can have discussions about the solutions, and then the political values come into play. Be like, okay, you come from the Green Party, this is your values on the solution to this scientific problem, or you come from the Conservative Party, your values can then influence the solution to that scientific problem. Throughout our first year, we've really been trying to tell stories of those who have made that leap from across the political spectrum. So we founded this podcast called Periodically Political. And the first season, we're almost done. We're floored by the feedback that we've gotten and the types of guests that we've gotten on the show. For example, we've had folks from every political party in Canada, or every major political party in Canada, every level of government, so municipal, provincial, federal. We've even had like a former premier, like Dalton McGuinty, came on the show. You will be a guest on the next season of the show. So yeah, we're and the feedback that we're getting from various scientists and engineers who are kind of, we'll call them politically curious across the country, has been really, really great. Like they found the stories to be inspiring, and I think we may be convincing a few more people to take that leap. And I think now's definitely the time.
That's so exciting. And think of the impact that you can make by just by sharing those stories, right? And helping to demystify that process, which viewers of this vlog will know is something that I care much about, is how do we just promote democracy in general by getting more people involved. I want to ask you something about something you said earlier, about one of the core mission statements of your organization, of ElectSTEM, which is about making sure that science isn't polarized and politicized, and that science, the base ground facts of reality, that every political party and everyone has the same base set of facts that they can then argue and debate and determine based on different value sets what the right solution is. My question to you is, why do you think that science has become polarized and politicized? Why do you think that facts are no longer facts, but rather something that can be debated on the basis of argument?
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil. We had a podcast, or we have a podcast episode coming up, or by the time this airs, it's probably been out, with Preston Manning, where we dive into this topic a little bit on why, some people may think facts can be, you can make up your own facts, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And, he stressed that across Canada, it may not be as bad as what we see in the United States. But there definitely is still an element to that here. It comes, I don't know if I have the entirety answer. Like, we could probably argue as scientists that, oh, maybe there's a science communication issue. Like, perhaps as scientists, we should come out of our ivory towers a little bit and, actively communicate these issues in the community. But then, it's a two-way street, right? We have to have people accept the discussion and realize that science is not necessarily always absolute. There's areas of gray where it's like, this is the best data right now, but as more data comes through, things can change. And I think the idea of changing your opinion has been frowned upon in the past. Like, you think about, was it the 2004 American election, and John Kerry was labeled as a flip-flopper, and that was a bad thing because he changed his mind when new evidence came to light. But in science, we do that all the time. So perhaps there's a communications break somewhere along the lines. When with talking with Preston Manning, a lot of the things that were discussed was that, like, sometimes if you're fed a steady diet of misinformation through various media sources, it's just going to become ingrained in you. And then it's a matter of, how do you ensure we critically think about this, or critically think about everything that comes at us? That's a tall order, given how much information nowadays we process in a day.
That's so true. And I think about that too, in the sense of, because technology is moving so quickly, and because there's so much data that's coming more and more, it's almost like the government or politicians can't keep up with that, right? And the technological advancement and change, a politician, as I'm starting to learn myself, has to have at least a surface understanding of so many different issues, whether it's international politics or agriculture issues, or social cohesion, housing affordability, indigenous rights. It's difficult already for people just trying to make the best decision, and who don't maybe have that scientific background, or don't have the rigor to think critically in using a scientific method, and who may think that changing their opinion is a show or a sign of weakness rather than a sign of evolution of fact. So I guess, I think we both agree why we need to have more scientists in office. What are some concrete steps, that can be taken to get more scientists in office? And maybe more specifically, what are some barriers? Why is it so difficult for a scientist to run?
It's a complicated issue, I think. And part of it, I think, stems from the training we undertake. A lot of us are in school through at least half of our 20s, if not the entire decade of our 20s. And that's really a good time to get active in political life, right? Volunteering for different political parties or campaigns, or or trying to get internships at Parliament Hill or Queen's Park or whatever legislation that you want, that you're interested in. But it's probably more complicated than that just alone, because in grad school you can make time as long as you have a supportive supervisor, for example. I think it's probably been a little taboo. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. A lot of the research funding, at least in the academic side of things, comes from the various levels of government. So if you start to be politically active, do you worry that might negatively impact your funding? That could be a potential. I am speaking from, let's put the academic hat on at the moment, not the industrial scientist hat on. I think it's also, the job is just quite onerous. There's a lot of, it's quite busy. And so then you think, on top of this, are you going to go out and get engaged in the community? And I'm seeing more and more young scientists get actively engaged in the community. And I think it's amazing, because a lot of politics just starts at the community level, right? You want to help people, you want to make your community better. And I think we need to see, more of that. And this is where kind of science and engineering outreach can come into play, and communications, and kind of wrapping back around to your previous question. And I guess the last note to mention there is that we also are kind of nomadic, depending on the career path we want to take, right? Like, you and I have been lucky enough that we've been able to kind of settle down where we want to settle down, but that's definitely not the case for many scientists and engineers. And you kind of have to go where the job takes you, and then to start building up a political career and a community in your 30s, for example, or even later. I imagine it's quite challenging, and to lay the foundation for political runs, it could be problematic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree with you more, and it's really dawned on me how privileged I am to be able to actually do this, right? Like, I'm in a position where I'm financially secure enough that I can take 6 months or however long off of work and still afford rent.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm also able, as you said, I was able to choose where I live. And I ended up living here in Toronto because my fiance works at Sick Kids. She loves it here. Her family's here. I love it here. This is my community. This is my home. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah.
So I almost feel it's incumbent on me, to run and to take this opportunity and to be representative of the voices of many people who perhaps don't have the luxury, because it is a luxury, to be able to participate in democratic in democracy. What advice would you give to people then to get involved, even in small ways? Maybe they don't have to run for office, but what are some other ways that they can get involved, either in politics or in policy?
Mm-hmm.
Those two things are different.
Yeah.
And a lot of, that's part of my learnings through this as well, is just because there's politics with a capital P, and then there's like policy with a small p. And very different people work in those two spaces. But yeah, what advice would you give to people perhaps who are scientifically minded, scientists, engineers, who want to start making a bigger impact beyond just their field, and maybe aren't as privileged as I am, quite frankly, to be able to run for office?
We ask this question to every single one of our guests.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get involved? And at the ground level, keep your ears to the ground in your community. Is there a community meeting coming up regarding a development, or regarding a park, or regarding a school issue? Go to those meetings. You'd be surprised at the energy that you can get out of that. I remember going to one in my neighborhood about a small redevelopment of a 2-story building into a 3-story apartment. And I was excited about this development. It made complete sense to me. And we went there, and, we discussed this with the city councilor and the members of the community. And it was, maybe this sounds really nerdy, but I thought it was really exciting. And, it's under construction right now. It's really cool to see this happen. The other major piece of advice that, has been repeated by politicians who have taken that, or scientists who have taken that leap to politics, is just volunteer on a campaign. You know, you don't have to necessarily donate your money, but donate some time to a campaign. It could be multiple campaigns, someone that you align with. You can check out different parties too to see, okay, does this fit my mentality? Is this where I'm heading? Is this what I think? Make a couple of phone calls for them, knock on a couple of doors, kind of break down that kind of barrier that you may have in your head. Because once you actually go campaign, you realize, like, knocking on doors to me seemed terrifying, petrifying the first time that I did it. And then, you know, you get 2 or 3 out of the way and you're like, wait a second, I'm just having a conversation with this person who lives in my neighborhood. I'm hearing about what they're thinking, and, you know, can the candidate I'm working for or volunteering for help or not help you? And then at the end of the day, you know, I really didn't have many negative experiences knocking on doors, which I think I was most worried about. So, you know, the worst thing that someone says is, no, I'm not interested, and shuts the door. And, you know, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's better than getting a grant or a paper rejected, I think.
That's true, because you've put so much effort into that grant or that paper, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love that. And, you know, a small plug, I am looking for volunteers in the world. So if you're in the Toronto area, follow, like, subscribe, smash that like button. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, visit my website and reach out and volunteer, and you can get involved in a really exciting campaign. But, you know, Chris, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think another thing that does, right, in terms of going to think about how unique of an experience it is to see a slice of Canada and to go door knocking and speak to your neighbors and just connect with people.
Mhm.
After this past year where we've been in our homes, in our holes, watching Netflix, so much Netflix, I know I'm craving new social interaction and just meeting strangers again. And what a great way to do that. And then on top of that, think of the soft skills that you built, right?
Mhm.
Like that mental barrier of talking to a stranger, and being able to communicate an idea quickly. That will help in your scientific career just as much as any
Absolutely.
other career. And you get to do this with other people for free, for fun, in the sun. I mean, I know that it can seem daunting, you know, knocking on doors. Like, people always have the image of like a salesperson in their like suit with a briefcase, but it's not like that. It's not like that at all. Okay, so I'm curious, Chris. You know, you're obviously super passionate about this. You have this amazing career in science. You've done stuff in academia. You've done stuff and continue to do stuff in industry, and now you're doing some stuff in policy and politics. What is the vision for you? Like, where do you want to go next, and what is this all leading to?
I don't know if I can answer that question. Um, yeah, I think right now, what really drives me is, you know, helping people and seeing ideas through. And I think the pandemic has crystallized the importance of having more elected officials with a scientific or engineering background. And, you know, that's really a major driving force for, you know, this work with ElectSTEM. And I think Darren and Monica would agree that is really what drives us. That's a motivating factor of, you know, what drives me with ElectSTEM. What's next for me? You know, I want to, you know, continue these conversations with other scientists and engineers, and, you know, try to show it's not a bad idea to try this. What do you have to lose? The worst case scenario is you lose.
Yeah.
And it's going to sting, but it's not, you know, would you regret that like taking that leap? I doubt it. If you are community minded. And I think, I don't know what the future has in store for me, and I'm you know, I'm excited for the opportunities that may arise in the future.
Well, thanks, Chris. I mean, no matter what you do, I can already say that you've made a huge impact. You were one of the first folks, you know, when I was starting to think about this whole thing, that reached out to. We've been carrying this conversation. I admit that a lot of the ideas around this vlog, around trying to demystify and be transparent about this campaign were directly inspired by you and the work that you're doing at ElectSTEM. And I think that I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm so happy that we have more scientists who not only want to run, but are also want other scientists to run, and are trying to create that generation, that cohort. I think younger people, regardless if they're scientists or not, are more politically engaged in recent times. I think people have come to the realization that government has a huge role to play in solving these big problems. And scientists are part of that solution too, in more ways than just science and technology.
I will say I agree fully with what you were noting there, that, you know, government will play major roles. And like part of the reason of getting more scientists and engineers is not just, you know, bring the scientific method to politics, but it's more the diversity of thought. Like we talked about this on your podcast episode, but it's, you know, we need more diversity in every sense of that word in our elected officials: diversity of careers, diversity of background, diversity of gender, things of this nature, and, you know, go on from there. Because different perspectives coming to the table and coming to a solution will give you a better solution. And with the challenges we face as a, not even as a society, as a civilization over the next 50 years, climate change, like the climate crisis, you can call it, like it's going to be front and center. Like the pandemic is short term. Climate change is a long-term challenge that we really need to start tackling urgently. I think most people of our generation and younger recognize this, probably even older, but the time is now. And I think this is another motivating factor why we see so many more like graduate students being actively engaged in this, and like getting their research out to the public to be like, hey, I'm working on this. I'm raising a flag, like a red flag here. We need to act now.